Just gonna do one final check. Yeah, after last week's fiasco, I would like to make sure that we have audio this time. And come on. There's a bit of a lag. Oh my gosh. There's a bit of a lag. All right, there we go. Okie dokie. All right, everyone. So, as the description says, I recently finished a Warhammer novel for the Emperor. It's like the first book in the Caiaphas Cain series. So I figured, why not? How about today we talk about some of the Warhammer novels? Now we're going to not talk about the Horus Heresy today because the Horus Heresy is very much a rabbit hole to get into and learning about. The series is 60 novels long, so we're obviously not going to get through all of that. Probably maybe next week we can talk about just the event itself and maybe some important novels to read for the Horus Heresy. But today we're just going to be talking about the novels in general. And to start with, bloop. So this is a picture from my latest article where I actually talked about getting into Warhammer, and this is my little shelf of books here that I have. Godric and Felix and Hero of the Imperium, that's the Caiaphas Cain book. These two I am currently working through, as you can see from the bookmarks here. I am 2 novels in for Godric and Felix. I got through Troll Slayer and Skaven Slayer, both of which are fantastic. So if you are like big fantasy nerds, or you just want to read a story about 2 dudes going around killing stuff, that is definitely the series for you. And the Caiaphas Cain series, sorry. You're also probably going to see me sniffling a little bit throughout because I don't know. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm just sneezy for no reason. But the Caiaphas Cain series, it is framed like his memoirs. So, and they were memoirs that came out several years after his adventures, and they're being edited by his buddy old pal, Amberly Vale, and he's just talking about some of the big events in his life. And the first volume for the Emperor is when he's going on to this planet called Gravelax because the Tau are trying to come in and do their whole greater good thing with the people there, and the Empire's not too happy about that. But they just quickly discover that there is a conspiracy going on behind the scenes. And this is also the volume where he meets Amberly Vale. So the woman who is editing his memoirs, this is the novel where he meets her for the first time. And the other books down here are ones I'm planning to get into. I was actually planning on starting with Eisenhorn because that's what I saw on all of the Warhammer Reddit subreddits, is to start with Eisenhorn. It's good to, get your toes into the world. But then I got the Caiaphas Cain when I started reading that, and then Godric and Felix came in, and then I started getting all sorts of recommendations. I am going to take a break from the omnibuses for now, just to get to reading The Infinite and the Divine. That's about the Necrons, because the sequel to that book, I believe it's The Warped and the Wicked, is going to be coming out very soon. So I'm like, why not? How about I take a pause and read this? Also got Night Lords, and I got my Krieg books, and I also got a book on Yarick, and one book that's not in here because I literally just got it yesterday. It's the founding, and it's about Gaunt. So that one commissar that I was trying to learn about a few episodes back, Emmanuel Gaunt. Yeah, that's his omnibus, and I've been wanting to get my hands on that for a little bit. So those are my books, and we're probably going to see a few of them in the videos we're going to be looking at today. So today I'm going to try and get started on this guy here. He's going to be a bit tricky because I'm quickly seeing some nooks and crannies here that it's probably going to be very difficult to get to, but I'm going to do my best. I also decided to place my finished guys right here. Let's see if I can inch it a little bit. Here we go. There, so you can actually see them. See a little bit of my Magos too. Wait a minute, hold on. Did I miss a spot? Oh, no, that's just the shadow. I'm still getting used to all this, like, priming stuff, so. Anyways. All right, so let's share this tab instead. Work, okay. All right, so we got a couple of short videos here, and if we got time, I got another video that's just about a comic series that looks interesting. But all right, so let's start with Arbiter Ian. 40K novels, where to start?
Hi gang. So after doing 5 episodes of Book Club and a review of every Horus Heresy novel, one of the consistent things people have asked in the comments is where to start with all the Black Library novels. Like, where do you start reading about Warhammer 40k? And this is like a valid point. There are hundreds of novels at this point, and like many tie-in series, they were originally written for people who were already fans of the tabletop games, and I guess were expected to have some knowledge of the universe. Unlike other fantasy series that were novels first, in
Yeah, I mean, Caiaphas Cain, you should know a little bit about the world. Like, I was a few pages in before I had to start Googling what certain terms were. Like, I think it's like the 5th page in the book where it talks about there were salamanders on the planet that Cain arrived at. And I first was like, wait, the salamanders? Why are the salamanders here? But then I Googled it, and salamander's like a type of vehicle. There's also a truck called the Lehman Russ, which is, yes, the same name as the Primarch Lehman Russ, and that can also be a little bit confusing. But yeah, I think like for the 40K books, you'll probably need to know a little bit about the lore. Godric and Felix, you can pretty much just jump right on in, and it's a fantasy world. So there are dwarves, there are elves, there are all sorts of baddies that are coming to get you, and they will. The books do explain the world quite well, so you're not going to be totally lost with Godric and Felix. But I guess for the 40K books, yeah, you should probably have some knowledge of the tabletop game and the goings-ons there. So there's that.
Warhammer, the novels aren't really expected to be your first step into these worlds, or at least weren't when they started coming out. So this can all be really confusing if you're new. Another thing with Black Library novels, particularly 40k Black Library novels, is that there's no linear timeline. Warhammer 40k is a setting that spans thousands of years. So instead of there being an official reading order with a starting novel, Black Library novels are split up into loads and loads of mini-series and trilogies that could take place at any point in those thousands of years and may or may not be affected by the events in other trilogies. So in this video, I'm going to go through a few good starting points for people new to the setting or who just want to see what it's all about. I'm also going to try and stick to some of the more well-known and more well-regarded authors, just because I want these to be enjoyable reads for people who are used to reading sci-fi in general. Finally, before we start, if you are new to the 40k setting, it's worth mentioning that while the setting has remained pretty static for the last 30 years, there's been a big leap forward in the great universe-wide narrative of the setting since about 2017. Previously, Warhammer 40,000 novels were set some point in the 41st millennium. That's the year starting 40,000 and something. And they still are, but also there's now an advancing timeline right at the very end of that time period, and that timeline affects the setting as a whole. You don't have to start with those recent timeline novels, and Black Library is still publishing books set in the entire 41st millennium, but I'll just make clear which ones are which as we go through them. Right, where to start? Well, Black Library actually has a page for that. I think this list is okay. It seems very focused on getting you up to speed with the most recent events and most recent novels, but there are some really good ones here, and in fact, there's a few classics. So Let's start with those. The Eisenhorn trilogy has, for a very long time now, been considered a really good entry point into the world of 40k. In fact, it's so famous as an entry point that I recommended it to my friend Mira when she was getting into the universe, and we've been reviewing the books as she reads through them on my book club series. But don't go there if you haven't read them yet, because
Yeah, all I know about Eisenhorn is he is an inquisitor. So the inquisitors are basically the secret police of 40k, and Eisenhorn's one of them. He's also a powerful psyker, from what I can tell. So, and I don't know how that works, considering that the 40k universe is not exactly fond of psykers, but I guess we'll have to read and find out.
no, spoilers. The trilogy tells the story of Gregor Eisenhorn, an Imperial Inquisitor, which is kind of a secret agent detective character within the main human faction in 40k, the Imperium. Through the trilogy, we see him investigate and battle the forces of chaos, kind of the main antagonist in the setting, all while trying to remain on the right side of the tracks and resist the temptations of the dark side. Sound familiar? They're written by Dan Abnett, an established comic and sci-fi author who's widely considered to be one of the best writers working for the Black Library, and they have the feel of an old-fashioned detective novel, which is, to be fair, a much easier entry point than a giant, colossal war story. They're written in the first person, which makes them very personal and immersive, and the fact that you're witnessing these events through the eyes of an Inquisitor, themselves something of an outsider in the Imperium, means that there's plenty of good opportunities for the main characters to explain how the world works.
Yeah, I don't know how many of the Warhammer 40k novels I'm ever going to recommend to people in my life, just because there are different genres in the Warhammer 40k, like novels, but it is also like when you get down to the brass tacks of it, it is a series based on like war gaming, so it's going to be a lot of like war stories and war stuff, and I understand that not everybody is into that. So it's good that they have some more variety within, though I don't know how I'm going to be able to convince my family or anyone in my life to read the books, except for apparently my brother-in-law has started reading the Horus Heresy, and when my sister told me that, I'm like, he's gonna be at that for a little while. And she's like, oh yeah, I looked it up, and it's like,
they take the reader on a journey across the whole 40k universe. They're ultimately very character-based novels, more about the experience of the main characters and how they deal with the somewhat nihilistic setting they find themselves in, rather than, say, universe-wide world-changing plot. Bear in mind that although there's plenty of action in the trilogy, these aren't battlefield novels. They're not there to dramatize a tabletop game of 40k, and they don't feature many of the models you might see on the tabletop. They're set behind the scenes. They explain the world all those battles are set in, which is why they're really good starting points. The original Eisenhorn trilogy consists of Xenos, Malleus, and Hereticus, also available in an omnibus, and the Black...
I believe, if I remember correctly, those are like the different branches of the Inquisition. Like the Inquisition itself is not just one big blob of secret police. It's also like they have different sectors for different goings on in the Imperium. So you have the Xenos sector that's dealing mostly with like the aliens, so Tau, Eldar, orcs, whatnot. And you've also got a sector that's like specifically for heretics, like I said, and so on and so forth. So it's like Amberly Vale from Caiaphas Cain, she is from the Order of Xenos, so she deals with aliens. And yeah, so fun fact.
Library starting page lists Xenos as one of its recommendations. Yeah, which is a good one. Though the Eisenhorn trilogy ends there, some of the characters continue into Dan Abnett's other trilogies, so if you like them, there's room for you to continue following them. Okay, but what if you want something a bit more battlefield focused? Gaunt's Ghosts is our second series by Dan Abnett, a long-running series about a regiment of the Astra Militarum or Imperial Guard as they're shipped from war zone to war zone in a decades-long war against the forces of chaos. The main character, Ibram Gaunt, is another outsider. In fact, this whole regiment are somewhat outsiders, which means we get a nice, slightly outside view of how the Imperial Guard works, how things in Imperial war zones are done, and all the different environments and cultures within the Imperium that they come into contact with. There is a main character, the titular Ibram Gaunt, but really this is much more of an ensemble piece, with equal weight given to characters from across this regiment, from the raw recruits to the regimental command to the hangers-on family members and civilians that travel with them. While loads of the novels take place on the battlefield, with recognizable units from the game involved, there's also a ton that happens behind the scenes, and the books spend a lot of time exploring how this army would actually function in the greater war machine of the Imperium. Again, it's really all about how these characters interact with this world. The books are available as a series of omnibus editions, with 3 novels in each book, and the first of those, The Founding, is in Black Library's big list. If you were reading them individually, I'd actually recommend you start with the 3rd novel, Necropolis. It still sets up the premise from the first 2 books, but it plunges you into a much more interesting and many-sided conflict, the siege of a huge hive city on an industrial world. We meet our spread of characters from the ghosts, but they're serving alongside the city defense forces, and the plot spends a lot of time with the civilians from the city attempting to survive the coming war, and all these points of view are really good for a newcomer. Plus, the enemy in this are terrifying, and it really conveys well the brutality of the 41st millennium. Anyway, although I would recommend that as your starting point, it's the last book in this Founding trilogy, so I guess start at the start. So historically, those have been 2 of the most popular series. We spent a lot of time with human characters, and I think that's a good thing, but what if we wanted to plunge into 40k with the most famous faction? Space Marines. Well, picking Space Marine novels is a little bit harder. There are loads of them, but as post-human super soldiers bred only for war and who are also meant to be like really horrible, they're not necessarily the most compelling characters to write. It's much harder to find good entry points for them, and some of the best Space Marine novels actually have loads of human characters around to give you points of view characters. However, the current timeline is very focused on them, and so are a lot of the Black Library recommendations. If you're looking to start with the current timeline, then the Dawn of Fire series, currently only 2 books in, is a really good introduction, especially the first novel, Avenging Sun. We explore a part of the galaxy from the point of view of a recently activated Ultramarine captain, and hear about his conflicted relationship with Mechanicus, his own status, and his Primarch, Robert Guillermin, an overarching presence in all these models.
Some of these names, it's like I've heard his name pronounced Robute Guillermin, but I guess it's Robute Guillermin. What's another good one? Yeah, but there's like a couple of names in 40k where I hear multiple different pronunciations of it. It's like, wait, how are we supposed to pronounce this? Like with the Yarrick series, I've heard his name being pronounced Yarrick or Yarrick, and it's like, which one is it?
Novels. It's got plenty of action. The lead character's a Primaris Space Marine from one of the standard not too weird chapters. It's pretty good, and I think the Dawn of Fire series is probably a better introduction to the current setting than the other big series, Dark Imperium, which throws you right in at the very top of the Imperial command structure without, I think, much explanation. I think the best Space Marine novel in the current timeline, though, is Spears of the Emperor by Aaron Dembski-Bowden, in which we follow a Space Marine emissary from a very by-the-book chapter as he goes to reinforce a weakened and out-of-touch chapter on the other side of the Great Rift. This book is much smaller and more contained in scope than many of the other recent 40k novels, because it's about this one mission. And we get to see not only very different sides of the Imperium, but also 2 really different ways of being a Space Marine. Also, a lot of this book's told from the point of view of 2 really brilliantly written human characters, so you get a good outside eye on all of this. In a similar style to this is Dan Abnett's Brothers of the Snake. This is a bit older, set earlier in the 41st millennium, but similarly to Spears of the Emperor, it's a really good look at the escalating scale of Space Marine stories, tracking a single Space Marine in a series of encounters as he rises through the ranks of his chapter. I think this is a really good first novel if you particularly want to look at Space Marines. And lastly, on the Space Marine front, if all this backstage character building is a bit much, then there's always the Space Marine Battles series, which I guess is a series of standalone action novels. Some of my highlights in this are Hell's Reach by Aaron Dembski-Bowden and Wrath of Iron by Chris Wright, which also do a really good job of showing just how horrible Space Marines can be. Okay, that's enough Space Marine action. The last thing I wanted to go into here is crime. We said earlier that one of the reasons books like Eisenhorn are such good introductions to the setting is that they have the format of a detective novel where the lead character is actively searching for more information. Well, there's a few more Black Library novels that do the same thing. The Shira Calpurnia series by Matthew Farrer is really good for this. Calpurnia is an arbitrator, the space police of the setting, recently reassigned.
And basically Judge Dredd. They're Judge Dredd. The Arbiters are Judge Dredd. Yeah, I saw it was like I think it was one of the animations that was like announcing that a new kit was coming out, and it was about the arbitrators, and I think he said something to the effect of "Citizens, I am the law," and it's like, oh my god, that's Judge Dredd. That is just Judge Dredd right there. And they don't even try to hide it. I mean, they kind of look like RoboCop more than anything, but they don't even try to hide that it's basically Judge Dredd. And they expect us to believe that they're totes original.
Signed to a major hub planet, and who has to come to terms with her new role, which requires a lot more politics, diplomacy, and intrigue than her previous role, which was kind of as a riot cop. It's another trilogy, and in each book we get a really in-depth look at an imperial culture and the various factions that make it work. From the ruling nobility of a planet in the first book to the secretive world of astro-telepaths in the third book. Again, it's a gentler introduction away from the battlefield, but all three novels are really, really interesting ways into the hobby. And finally, on that note, I haven't read any of these, but Black Library have just started a Warhammer crime imprint that apparently is really, really good. Again, maybe that's a really nice way into the setting. Now, most of the stuff I've been recommending has been from the Imperium's point of view, and I still think that's probably a good idea. They are the human faction, they're the protagonists in pretty much all the storylines, but if you did want a different point of view, then Brutal Cunning and The Infinite and the Divine are really good starting points. Brutal Cunning by Mike Brooks is loads of fun, written from the point of view of the orcs invading a Mechanicum Forge world, and The Infinite and the Divine looks into the thousands of years long relationship between two Necron characters. Right, that should be enough to get you started. A load of options, whether you want to start with the setting or on the battlefield, whether you want to start with the current timeline or any point in the entire 40.
Yeah, a big joke you're going to hear about The Infinite and the Divine is that it is Old Man Yowie, and that's because when I've listened to a few of the sometimes Warhammer fans will just do voiceovers of some of the novels, and listening to some of the lines, like the back and forth between Trazen the Infinite and Orkin, who another name that I just do not know how to pronounce. Just hearing them go back and forth, they do sound like an old married couple. It's very funny to listen to. So I am super excited to get into that book, because I've been told by everyone it's funny, it's kind of touching, and it's just very out there, and I just can't wait to get into it.
First millennium. Of course, there are hundreds of novels and I haven't read them all, so if you think I've forgotten something, then put it in the comments below and maybe we'll get around to doing it in book club. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to hear more, like and subscribe, or click the link on the left to hear more of my voice. And if you want to vote on what books we cover next, I have a really simple Patreon where you can do just that. Links in the link below. See you next time.
Okay, so that's a nice little introduction for you people. I have two different what to read first, just in case, some it's like with comic books, where some people have like my top 10 reads, and there are some overlapping, but there are also like sometimes they'll just throw a new novel at you. So I got two of those there. Looks like we got the best books of Warhammer 40k to get into by the Grim Dark Goblin. So let's look into that next. And that is Caiaphas Kane on the cover, so we'll probably hear from him.
What's up, nerds? Zach the Goblin here. I love Warhammer 40k. I know. Big surprise. I don't think I have ever been as enraptured by anything as completely as I have been by the lore of this universe. Besides YouTube videos, my favorite way to consume said lore is by reading the books. And boy, let me tell you, there are a lot of them. So today I'm going to be giving you my personal recommendation on books I think you should read, or at least start with, and I'll give you my reasons why. This won't be in any particular order, and this isn't an exhaustive list. So if I missed one of your favorites, put it down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content, and without further ado, it's Goblin time. I am going to start with a recommendation from the Horus Heresy, since I do have an ongoing series explaining these books. Now, technically, this isn't really 40k, since it happens in 30k and is more like a prequel that sets the stage. That being said, I really like the Horus Heresy, and it's my video, so I'm still going to count it. So the Horus Heresy book I think you should definitely start with is Horus Rising by Dan Abnett. Abnett. Horus Rising is book 1 in the Horus Heresy series, so it makes sense you would start there. But beyond that, I actually think it's written pretty friendly for first-time readers. Many of the central concepts of Warhammer 40k are explained pretty well here, so you're not going to feel super lost. I also think this book does a really good job of setting the stage for Horus's fall from the Emperor's favorite son and star of the Imperium to traitor for chaos. I think people who are new to the series and want to start at the beginning would enjoy this book. Now, there are definitely people who would disagree with that, saying that new people shouldn't start with the Horus Heresy. And I do agree that having some background of the actual 40k setting would be helpful for context. This was actually the first book I read back when I got into 40k, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, I don't think this book is purely for people who are new to the setting either. I also think you would enjoy this if you wanted to see the Imperium's slow decline into the grim darkness of the current setting. And if you do enjoy this book, Horus's initial descent into chaos is continued in False Gods by Graham McNeil and Galaxy in Flames by Ben Counter. I was there the day that Horus killed the Emperor. There are a lot of great Horus Heresy books.
Okay, that quote in particular, I think, if I remember correctly, that is from a different book. It's based on this one event that happens where, a long story short, Horus and his crew get to this is before his fall, get to this planet, and there's this guy there who's claiming to be the Emperor, which is a big no-no. And he's also, like, got a cult and whatnot. So Horus kills the imposter, and the guy in question, he jokingly says, I was there the day Horus killed the Emperor. And it's supposed to be like a funny goof ha-ha thing between friends. Then Horus betrayed the Emperor, and we all, oopsie days.
To be fair, that could be a video all on its own, but since a lot of them build off each other, I'm going to end my Horus Heresy recommendations there. That being said, I am immediately going to backtrack and recommend another one, and that book is Nemesis by James Swallow. This book follows a kill team of assassins built with members from the different assassin clades, and their mission to assassinate the arch traitor and war master Horus. This one is a little divisive. That is because it's not necessarily a good Horus Heresy book, because it's more of a side story and it doesn't really move along the overall plot. I mean, going into the Horus Heresy, you know how it ends. So you know that the Kill Squad is ultimately doomed to fail. So this is one of those Horus Heresy books that you can actually just skip and you won't.
So it's like the Rogue One of the Horus Heresy. Okay.
Won't really miss out on the overall plot because it ultimately doesn't really affect much. But it's actually because of all of that I'm recommending it, because I actually recommend it as somewhat of a standalone book. Because the only thing that you really need to know prior to this book is that Horus is a traitor and is leading a rebellion against the Emperor. I think this book is a pretty cool window into the Imperium's Assassinorum, and you get to see how the different clades complete their work. I think you would enjoy this if you like the idea of a ragtag group of assassins coming together to try and pull off a seemingly insurmountable mission, with plenty of friction and drama along the way. Your brother will beat us, Lord Dorn. He will win this war unless we match him blow for blow. We cannot. We must not be afraid to make the difficult choices, the hardest decisions. Horus Lupercal will not hesitate. Now let's move towards the modern setting of 40k. And my next recommendation, Xenos. Book 1 of the Eisenhorn trilogy by Dan Abnett. If you were to Google search the best Warhammer 40k books, you would see a bunch of people recommend the Eisenhorn series. And there's good reason for that. This book is a great introduction to the political and ideological aspects of 40k. It has great action and lots of political intrigue. You also get to learn more about the Inquisition, as Gregor Eisenhorn is an inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos. This is one of those books that I don't really want to spoil too much of, so I'm not really going to talk much about the plot. But this book is a great jumping in point for 40k, and if you love political intrigue and compelling and interesting characters, you will love this book. I think the Eisenhorn series is a must-read for any 40k fan. If he speaks again without me knowing who he is, I will throw him out of the window, and I won't open it first. The Eisenhorn series does an amazing job of setting the grimdark tone of 40k, but maybe you want something a little more lighthearted. That brings us to my next recommendation, the Caiaphas Cain series by Sandy Mitchell. For this series, you could start with the first.
By the way, Sandy Mitchell, you might be thinking, oh, a female writer. Awesome. And I thought the same thing until I looked it up, and Sandy Mitchell is a dude, and Sandy Mitchell is just his, like, pen name. So I'm not entirely sure why he went with a female pen name. I'm not sure why he did that, but I mean, hey, it's a good series, so I'm not gonna complain.
First book for the Emperor, or if you're a big fan of more or less going in chronological order, you can start with the short story Fight or Flight, which is what I did. Although there's not really a wrong answer here. This series follows the misadventures of the titular Caiaphas Cain, an imperial commissar who is either a bumbling coward whose success and fame is attributed to huge amounts of luck, or someone who has great instincts and is actually extremely competent, who just suffers from mega imposter syndrome. I personally think it falls somewhere in the middle, but I err towards the latter. But
yeah, and I brought this up last week when I was talking about those people who claim that they only read the dialogue in books. Because if you only read the dialogue for the Caiaphas Cain books, you're going to have a completely different idea of who Caiaphas Cain is as a character. So it's like you need to read everything. And I do love the commentary that Amberly Vale gives while she's editing the book, because she'll have like little footnotes with her explaining a concept that Caiaphas Cain brings up, and he just doesn't want to get into it because he's a little self-centered. So she adds the context in, or she'll add in her own commentary. Like one of the notes that kind of hints at just how deep their relationship goes. At one point, Caiaphas Cain makes this comment of, well, I've killed people who are far less deserving in far worse ways, and I haven't lost any sleep over it. And then Amberly makes a note of, actually, I've known him to wake up in the middle of the night from nightmares, so he's not being truthful there. And it's like, he's having nightmares, Amberly. Is there a little something you don't want to mention, Amberly? Yeah, they are a couple. They don't want to. They're not admitting it because it would get them both in trouble if they were in a relationship, an open relationship. But yeah, it is very heavily implied that they are a couple.
ultimately, that's for you to decide when you read the books. One thing that holds true regardless, though, is that you're going to have a good time reading these books. I could go on and on about Caiaphas Cain as a character, as he is one of my favorites in the entire setting, not to even mention amazing supporting characters such as Inquisitor Amberly Vale and Cain's loyal aide, Jurgen. But for brevity, I am just going to say that if you like compelling stories featuring misadventures, complex characters, and loads of humor, which is pretty rare for 40K, then I think you will love the Caiaphas Cain books, knowing from long experience that credit snowballs all the faster the less you seem to want it. Moving away from books centered around the Imperium of Man, but still staying a little lighthearted, my next recommendation is The Infinite and the Divine by Robert Rath. This book catalogs the rivalry between two Necrons, Trazyn the Infinite and Orican the Diviner. Having a book centered around Necrons is pretty cool, but the real draw here is Orican and Trazyn playing off each other as perfect opposites. They really do not like each other, and at times will seemingly do things just to screw the other one over. Without spoilers, some highlights include Necrons don't really smile, but Trazyn is described as smiling constantly. Orican hates this, and it's implied Trazyn smiles explicitly for this reason. There is a fight scene between them, and it's noted that if it wasn't due to their metal bodies, because they're essentially senior citizens with no combat training, the narrator says, and I quote, "If this was in the flesh times, this would be utterly embarrassing." I might be dating myself a little bit.
Okay, now I'm really excited to read that book. Because yeah, they're both basically big nerds. Trazyn, he calls himself an archaeologist, but in practice, that means he basically is just stealing shit. And Orican is a time traveler, so they're both big nerds, and they're like not fighters at all. So the idea that they're basically just getting into a slap fight is very funny. And they're Necrons. They're robot skeletons that are millions of years old. So you'd think that they would be over petty little squabbles by this point, especially since they're trying to, kickstart their civilization again. But no, they're going to be petty little shits about it.
Here, but Trazen and Orican kind of give off the same vibes as those two old guys from the Muppets. So if any of that interests you, I think you should definitely check.
Oh yeah, apparently there is a scene where they go to an opera because, yeah, Trazen has stolen an entire opera house with the people inside of it.
Check out this book. You stupid bastard, sneered Orican. You got us box seats for a coup. Well, the reviews were very good. For my last recommendation, we are going over to the Chaos Space Marines with Soul Hunter by Aaron Dembski Bowden. But if I were you, I would just get the entire Night Lords omnibus, which includes...
I got that. Yeah, I'm sticking to the omnibuses because from what I understand, the individual books can get quite pricey, especially the rare ones. I really want to get my hands on the Conrad Kurz book, but when I looked it up on eBay, it's like $100. So...
Soul Hunter, Blood Reaver, and Voidstalker. And I didn't mention this earlier, but you can do the same thing with the Eisenhorn trilogy. I honestly wasn't initially a fan of the Night Lords, but this trilogy was amazing and definitely changed my mind. Every book I've ever read by Aaron Dembski Bowden, though, has been top tier. These books follow the exploits of the Night Lord's first claw, led by the prophet Talos, who shares their late Primarch Conrad Kurz's curse of prophecy. There aren't nearly enough books which follow the Chaos Space Marines, and these books obviously do that, but even beyond that, these books have the amazing ability to make you feel invested in someone as evil as Talos and his warband. Honestly, these books were a big surprise for me, and I can't recommend them enough. So if you want to follow around the bad guys for a little bit, I think you should really check these out.
I will not see my life hoard away without meaning. Do you hear me? Do you understand me? Prince of cowards. I want vengeance against the galaxy that hates us. I want impurity.
I mean, you guys don't exactly do a whole lot to prove to people why they shouldn't hate you. With the whole skinning people thing. Yeah, that thing, that tends to put people off.
Real worlds to cower when we draw near. I want the weeping of this empire's souls to reach all the way to Holy Terra, and the sound of suffering will choke the corpse god on his throne of gold. I will cast a shadow across this world. I will burn every man, woman, and child, so the smoke from the funeral pyres eclipses the sun.
Yeah, you're not making a great case on why people shouldn't hate you there, dude.
The dust that remains, I will take the echo of damnation into the sacred skies above Terra and rain the ashes of 20 million mortals down onto the Emperor's palace. Then they will remember us. Then they will remember the Legion they once feared.
Once feared? They've always feared you. What the hell are you talking about? Do you know anything about your own damn Legion's history? They've always feared you. They still fear you. It's just the Imperium is trying to deny your existence.
Thank you so much for staying till the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in more book stuff, go check out my Horus Heresy Explained Quickly series.
All right, yeah. Well, again, we'll get deeper into the Horus Heresy in another video. So, do. All right. Is the side camera view okay, guys? Because I get the feeling that I'm like dipping out of view here in the little corner here. So let me know what you think of this new camera angle.
The one Warhammer novel everyone should read first might sound like an impossible question, with hundreds of books and stories making up a 40k canon that is so massive and complex, even curious and excited potential fans bounce off the franchise every single day. If you ask 40K veterans where to start, you'll get a lot of answers, calling out the best books and trilogies that they've ever read, only for you to open up one of those books and suffer immediate whiplash, being hit with a decade of lore and characters you're apparently already supposed to know, which is a problem that this video aims to solve.
I like that.
To give you the answer you're looking for, yes, there is one book series specifically designed to walk new fans into the lore of Warhammer 40K. And without dropping any spoilers, in this video, I'm going to explain the reasons why and how it works so well, even if you know absolutely nothing about the 40K universe. If you're taking your first step into Warhammer novels, the first name you're almost guaranteed to hear is Gregor Eisenhorn. And thankfully for new fans, Eisenhorn's story is not only the easiest to start reading, but has officially become the most important to the past, present, and future of the entire Warhammer 40K.
And more Eisenhorn, but yeah, I really like how that's looking. That looks so pretty. I'm getting better at this. Yay! Yeah.
Timeline, teasing the biggest twist to the setting of all time in the next upcoming novel. But first, the obvious question. Why has this shadowy Inquisitor become one of the most well-known and go-to Warhammer heroes over the past 20 years? To start with, he has one of the coolest jobs imaginable. While Space Marines might fight on the...
That's debatable. I mean, if you consider blowing up planets just because one asshole has decided to be a heretic, then sure, yeah, it's a cool job, but yeah, Inquisitors are not, like, they're not great people. Huh? Hey, babe.
Hey.
Forgot something?
No, I'm just waiting on a call.
Oh.
I don't know if they can be coming in. So.
Do you mind staying on the porch for about 20 more minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but hey, check it out. Look at this cool effect I did on my mini. Yeah,
Cool.
I did
It's like tarnish or something.
yeah. Well, I'm dry brushing some silver onto it, so it's gonna look super cool. But
Cool.
oh, I'm so proud and happy.
Good job, Dave.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. You know you're done.
Alrighty. All right, so let's continue.
front line of endless galactic battlefields, the Inquisition works behind the scenes to prevent the end of the world through covert intelligence and investigations. As the Warhammer equivalent of the CIA or MI5, Inquisitors are basically empowered to act as the secret agents of the Imperium, with technology and a budget that would make James Bond jealous. Inquisitors are not only trained in firearms, bladed, hand-to-hand, and even psychic combat, but are encouraged to assemble their own warband of allies recruited to spy, research, or fight at their sides. Considering how much freedom Inquisitors are given to achieve their mission, building their own networks of informants, secret identities, safe houses, and weapons caches across the galaxy, the resulting variety of style, wardrobe, and physical augmentations make Inquisitors some of the most colorful and unique characters in all of Warhammer. And as a veteran and legend of this organization, there are few who can compete with Gregor Eisenhorn's elite unit.
Yeah, a bit on that technology thing, and this is a kind of a funny moment in the Caiaphas Cain books. Amberly Vale has this thing, like I forget the exact title she called it, but it's like called a disruptor, where if she is hit too close by any shrapnel or a weapon or something, then she is immediately transported to a different location. However, it's not always like reliable. And in one scene, she gets like blipped out of the room, and you hear just this crashing sound. And Caiaphas Cain makes the assumption that, oh, she must have just crashed into a table with some porcelain on it. And Amberly's little note annotation at the bottom was explaining how unreliable the machine is, and then she adds the note of it was a stupid place to put a table anyways. it is a very funny little moment.
Mainly thanks to author Dan Abnett, who previously co-created the modern Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel Comics. So, after checking the box with the coolest possible main character for a series of novels, what is it that makes the Eisenhorn series the best introduction to 40K lore for new readers? Put it simply, The first book in his series, Xenos, shrinks an entire universe of lore down to the level of a single person inside of it. On the surface, that's literal. The book is written in first person as if the reader is Eisenhorn or is reading his personal account, explaining every scene, every threat, and every bit of new lore as he encounters it. There's a useful comparison here to something like the Witcher series, referring only to Geralt's storyline in Season 1, that the world may be one massive web of wizards, witches, kings, and prophecies, sure, but it's only seen through the eyes of a monster hunter looking for his next job. In the same way, Eisenhorn doesn't concern himself with the grand forces of chaos consuming entire planets, since his job is to find and arrest the mad scientist dissecting people in a basement lab, no matter what evil voices may have told him to do it. It's the Inquisition which polices this casual, everyday evil across the Imperium, meaning his team of rogues, soldiers, and psychers bearing the mark of the Inquisition send everyday citizens running in fear, people who have never and likely will never see a mythical space marine in person. As Eisenhorn's career progresses through his sequels, which span over a century, conveniently collected into one.
I'm a little perturbed that they're not mentioning any of the Warhammer fantasy books, because the YouTuber that we watched for the Mechanicus video, Pancreas, he loves Godric and Felix, so obviously he brings them up, and he also has brought up some other like Warhammer fantasy stuff, like Witch Hunters, which is basically the Warhammer fantasy equivalent to the Inquisitors, where they basically go around and weed out anything that's trying to harm the Empire and blah 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 blah. So I'm a little curious as to why they're only focusing on 40K. All of these people.
Omnibus, including the 3 main novels and several case file short stories, he slowly uncovers a much, much larger threat, far larger than just his own books could contain. This is great news for fans in need of a longer reading list, but there is some clarification needed, since the Eisenhorn story continued into not one, but 2 sequel lines. The first of those is the not required reading, but still solid Ravener trilogy, following Eisenhorn's fellow Inquisitor as he builds his own ensemble cast adventure. But it's Dan Abnett's sequel trilogy continuing the tale of Bequin, Eisenhorn's former pupil, which has taken the story to galactic levels and dropped its bombshell twist ending. I can't recommend this story higher and avoid spoilers at all costs. Even if Eisenhorn is the best Warhammer novel to read first, there's a good chance some of you will have been hoping for a different answer, anchored on the poster boys of the 40K franchise, the legendary Space Marines. In which case, I've got good news, because Eisenhorn isn't the only book that a new fan can read first. If you're looking to dive into the blood, battles, and brotherhood of the famous Space Marines, not to mention one of the best books in the entire 40K canon, there is no better story than the tragedy of the 16th Legion, the doomed sons of Horus and their fall to chaos, setting the events of the world-shattering Horus heresy into motion. And in this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know to let Horus Rising get you reading Warhammer 40K novels at full speed. If you've watched my introduction to the Warhammer universe, then you already know enough to get started reading the Horus heresy, with one massive warning. This event series may have expanded into a 70-book line telling every story possible within the larger rebellion, but it began with just one. And while that first book proved to be a big enough win to greenlight everything which followed, it was not written to be part 1 of 70. It was written to finally tell the biggest story that had never been told, which makes it hard to beat as a logical place for newcomers to start. It's the same reason why Marvel fans will forever tell their children to start with the first Iron Man movie, no matter how big or even better the larger MCU became. Set 200 years into the Emperor's Great Crusade, Horus Rising follows the Primarch and his legion, known then as the Luna Wolves, in the original mission they were created to execute. And right from the beginning, this prequel story makes a brilliant decision that, frankly, Star Wars might have been wise to copy. Because with so little known about Horus's actual fall to evil, it would have been easy to depict him like a young Anakin Skywalker, an ambitious man with incredible potential, but who falls to some inherent darkness. Instead, author Dan Abnett depicts Horus, the Emperor's favorite son, as more than deserving of that title. As the first found Primarch, and therefore the longest to study at his father's side, Horus was an unmatched leader. Glorious, charismatic, and revered by all who served him, his sons most of all. Thanks to his strategic, calculating, and resolute nature, his legion struck with precision and power, achieving decisive victory no matter the cost. And it's in this victorious era that Horus Rising begins. with two major story points to know going in. One, as the newly named War Master leading the entire crusade in his father's place, Horus has not yet been corrupted into the champion of chaos. Because two, the Primarchs and the Space Marines still have no idea that chaos even exists. Believing the
Oh yeah, that is a big, like, what the hell were you thinking, Big E moment when it was decided that no, we can't let people know about chaos. We can't let them know about all this. And it's like, why? And it's like, like, one of the big memes in Warhammer is Magnus didn't do anything wrong. Magnus is another Primarch. He saw Horus getting betrayed or Horus getting both betrayed and he being corrupted. And he tried to warn the Emperor, but then he accidentally like punched an entire hole through the webway and kind of fucked everything up. And he gets severely punished for that and he falls to Tzeentch. But it's like, before all of that, Magnus was trying to make the point to the Emperor that, hey, we should probably be more aware of what's going on. You should probably let us in on all this chaos nonsense, and we should probably study it more, because if we know about it, then we'll know how to counteract it. And they still said no. And it's like, Magnus is an extremely powerful psyker. And he's also, his big thing is he is a total nerd who's big into knowledge and gaining more knowledge. That's part of the reason why he fell to Tzeentch. But it's like, so you're telling the one son whose whole thing is, I need to know more, to just shut up and sit down? Yeah, that's not going to work out the way you think it will.
universe is only what they can see, and that magic or spirituality is nothing but superstition, the Luna Wolves conquer planet after planet, defeating aliens and resistant humans alike. And in that mission, there are few who command themselves better than Garviel Loken, the central protagonist of the Heresy's first act. As mighty and Astartes knight as any other son of Horus, but unlike the other lieutenants elevated to his Primarch side, Loken is described as a weapon which questions its use. And as a Space Marine whose loyalty is pledged to his father on a genetic level, the strength and humanity of his conscience makes Loken not only an incredible hero for a story, but a powerful witness to the fall of Horus, from the Emperor's favorite son to his complete opposite. Aside from all of the epic battles, the story also brings in multiple characters who eventually go on to become key figures in the timeline. But even if some fans might claim you should know that future to appreciate them, for the time being they really are just characters. If this sounds like the exact kind of story you were hoping for, then I have fantastic news, because the first 3 books of the series act as direct sequels, following Loken and a core group of characters as Horus is introduced, corrupted, and damned in Horus Rising, False Gods, and Galaxy in Flames. And best of all, if the size of the Heresy line is still looming ahead, don't worry. I won't spoil anything, but by the end of the 3rd book, the betrayal of the traitor legions is very much underway. At which point you don't need to read any of the Horus Heresy novels which immediately follow. Instead, you can see which books, Legion, or Primarchs people call out as the best of the line, or just dig into whichever factions or characters have captured your curiosity. Then make sure you're sitting down, because Horus Rising is not only a Hall of Fame novel, but it also opens with one of the most iconic sentences in the entire canon. If you're the kind of lore fan who wants to go back to the very start and see where the world-famous story truly began, then there is one Warhammer 40k novel you need to read, to not only understand how the legendary Space Marines were first created, but why the mysterious Constantine Valdor has suddenly become the most important character to the future of the entire franchise. The only problem? Everyone who recommends reading Valdor's prequel novel also gives a warning that the book is not only lore-heavy, but downright confusing for newcomers. To make sure this incredible must-read story can be enjoyed by anyone interested in reading it, let's consider that challenge accepted and use this video to explain everything you need to know to witness the birth of the Imperium for yourself. On the surface, Valdor seems like a no-brainer place for new Warhammer fans to begin reading 40k novels. Set just before the year 30,000, the Emperor has mostly conquered Terra through the Unification Wars, achieving victory thanks to the genetically perfected warriors of his Legio Custodes and the more plentiful ranks of the Thunder Warriors, a brutal proof of concept for the genetically enhanced Astartes who will be refined in the future. an army that was terrifying, unstoppable, and under the martial command of the Emperor's top general, now disappears from all historical records. And as this novel reveals, some high-ranking officials did seem to notice. There you have it. There's no need to worry about alien races because the Empire hasn't met any. No need to learn about the Primarchs since the Emperor has yet to recover them. And no references to characters or events from other novels the reader needs to have read. So why is Constantine Valdor's standalone novel, set entirely at the Imperial Palace on Earth over only a day or two, notoriously hard to follow? My best explanation is that it comes down to two reasons. First, the book doesn't open with a note asking readers to forget everything they know about Warhammer 40k, because in this prequel story, none of that has happened yet. And because of all that existing knowledge, it's difficult to remember just how little the characters know about what the Emperor has already done, let alone what he has planned for the future. It's a unique wrinkle that's easy to forget, but since every Warhammer book written before the year 40,000 is technically in the past, and usually follows events in somebody else's master plan, there should probably be a lot more characters in these stories who, in the moment, have absolutely no idea what is going on, and tragically have no idea that their future and that of humanity has already been decided by the Emperor of Mankind. Author Chris Raitt leans directly into that troubling perspective on the 40k future, which follows, ironically seen through the eyes of the Emperor's most loyal and unwavering general, Constantine Valdor.
I will say that if you ever want to get like a very good view into the Emperor's mindset and just understanding how terrifyingly like set in his ways he is, there is this short story that has been adapted to a quasi-animated film. I say quasi-animated because it does have illustrations and it does have voice acting work. However, there's like no animation, it's just stills. But it's called I believe it's like The Last Church, or the last, yeah, it's The Last Church, and he's talking with the last priest on Terra, and he's trying to convince this priest to give up religion. So it's not that the Emperor doesn't believe that there aren't any gods, it's just he has this idea that religion will be the thing that keeps humanity from moving forward. And he is so determined and set in his ways that even when the priest is trying to convince him or try to explain to him why he is the way he is, the Emperor just, no, baby. Sorry, my cat whacked my printer. So it's like no matter what the priest says, the Emperor just will not budge in his ways. He doesn't really care that there are people on Terra who don't necessarily want to give up a lot of the stuff that they have, who don't necessarily want to be dragged kicking and screaming into this new era. He's that determined, which then later comes to bite him in the ass when one of his sons, Logar, who does see him as a god, tries to spread like the gospel of the Emperor, and then the Emperor just freaks the fuck out and punishes him severely. And then he wonders why the word bearers betrayed him.
It would be an understatement to call Valdor one of the most important characters in all of 40k to this day, which explains why some actors might dream of playing the Captain General in live action, but also makes the insights offered in this prequel, opening with the very first words the Emperor spoke to Valdor, beyond valuable. Even if you take my advice and start by reading the Eisenhorn and Beckwin books, Valdor, Birth of the Imperium should be the one book you read next. I'll stop short of going into any spoilers, but if all this added context and guidance still doesn't make Valdor, the Birth of the Imperium an easy read, then rest assured that it will all make sense by the end of the story. And in each...
Okay, that's Abaddon, the spoiler. That Valdor's punching there. Oh, that is a very goofy face.
easy read, then rest assured that it will all make sense by the end of the story. And in the tragic, likely words of Sanguinius, you can't say I didn't try. While these books are some of the most foundational or important Warhammer stories that all fans will read eventually, I realize not everyone is looking for a world-changing, massive narrative spread across a dozen books, and especially not as their first step into the 40K universe. So if you're just looking to pick up a one-off standalone story with cool characters that you can enjoy with a totally blank slate, you also have some amazing choices. I might recommend these stories because they're self-contained, focused introductions, but they also stand a good chance of remaining your favorites once you've read dozens more. There's never a bad time to be a fan of the Blood Angels, and few members of the Vampiric Legion can turn heads.
All right, I'm gonna pause this video a little early because I've got a cat here who apparently has decided that my paint water is totally awesome to drink. Yes, the dirty paint water, and not the filtered cat fountain that I just cleaned for you yesterday. Okay, well, she's gone now, so continue.
Like Commander Dante. But long before he became the oldest and greatest of the angels, taking the golden face of his Primarch Sanguinius at the moment he was killed by Horus, Dante was a peasant boy living in desert wastes, dreaming of a life among the stars. The Guy Haley novel follows that boy's journey to join the famous Blood Angels, recalling the recruitment, trials, and transformation in a series of flashbacks as the current Dante leads the Space Marines against the Tyranids at the age of 1500. This book can lead into major storylines in the current 40K setting, but if you only know that you want to learn more about the Blood Angels and their struggle to control the blood hunger of their famous Red Thirst, then this is the place to start. For other Warhammer recruits, it's hard to hear or see anything about the werewolf Vikings of the Space Wolves without immediately needing to learn more. If that includes you, then you can start with William King's Space Wolf, following the journey of the eventually legendary Ragnar Blackmane. Forget the epic space travel and technology of the Imperium, though, because Ragnar begins his life as an isolated Viking, living in a true Viking-era society as we would recognize it today. Unlike Dante, Ragnar is recruited into a warrior lodge he has never even heard of, where mystical wolf priests exhibit superhuman power, offering aspirants the chance to walk in the footsteps of the mighty wolf god Russ, son of the Emperor. Aside from being a great Viking novel, entering the larger Warhammer universe through eyes that fail to...
I do like this artwork. Though I have heard that from a lot of people that the Space Wolves kind of sort of sucked, especially during the Horus Heresy. I mean, Leman Russ gets easily tricked by Horus into just absolutely wrecking Magnus's shit, like beyond the punishment he was supposed to receive from the Emperor. And, well, Leman Russ and Magnus don't like each other, because Leman Russ does not like psychers at all. Magnus is a big psycher, and Magnus just doesn't like Leman Russ because he's the jock and Magnus is a nerd.
Understand it makes Space Wolf a lot of fun. Plus, it actually walks readers through Ragnar's transformation into an Astartes, including the wolf-like changes all aspirants must conquer first. And of course, those who succumb to it. If you're looking to skip over the origin story and accompany Space Marines on the job, then I strongly recommend Brothers of the Snake, featuring several missions centered on Pryad, a Space Marine of the Iron Snakes of Ithaca, a somewhat unorthodox chapter. Rather than galactic wars, the Iron Snakes are sworn to defend the residents.
Okay, so this is just, we've already got this recommendation, and I'm seeing here that the next recommendation is Gaunt's Ghost, and we've already been through that. I'm a little disappointed, that there's no Warhammer fantasy books in here, because Godric and Felix is fabulous, and there are plenty of other Warhammer fantasy books there. Weird. Oh well, I think I came to like a good enough stopping place for my little guy here. Like, I am loving this silver effect that I did for his weapon here. It looks so good. But yeah, lots of nooks and crannies with this one. I have no idea how I'm going to paint his skull with wings on his breastplate, but I will figure that out later. All right, so if you enjoyed the stream, please give it a like, leave a comment. Let me know if you want me to explore on the Horus Heresy the next video, or if you have any suggestions for the next stream. So, yeah, well, I hope you all have a very nice Sunday. Bye!